Hello friends, welcome back to MAINS Answer Writing Basics program being conducted by Team India for IAS. This is Manjunath Mudod. Today we are going to discuss about UPSC MAINS 2024 GS-1 paper. So within GS-1 paper we are going to pick 5 questions. Question number 1 to question number 5 as part 1 of the video. So in this video we are going to discuss answer approach and major content that can be written for the question number 1 to question number 5. ಈ ವಿಡಿಯೋ ನೋಡಿದ್ಮೇಲೆ ನಿಮಗೆ ಕ್ವಶನ್ ನಂಬರ್ 1 ಇಂದ ಕ್ವಶನ್ ನಂಬರ್ 5ಗೆ ಯಾವ ರೀತಿ ಕಂಟೆಂಟ್ ಬರಿಬೇಕು, ಯಾವ ರೀತಿ ಆನ್ಸರ್ನ ಸ್ಟ್ರಕ್ಚರ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು, ಯಾವ ರೀತಿ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ಸ್ ಬರಿಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಗೊತ್ತಾಗುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಆಲ್ಮೋಸ್ಟ್ ನಿಮಗೆ ಕ್ವಶನ್ ನಂಬರ್ 1 ಇಂದ ಕ್ವಶನ್ ನಂಬರ್ 5ಗೆ ಏನೇನಿದೆ ಕ್ವಶನ್ಸ್ಗೆ ಅದಕ್ಕೆಲ್ಲದಕ್ಕೂ ಕಂಟೆಂಟ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಬಟ್ ಯಾವ ರೀತಿ ಬರಿಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿರಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ ಅದನ್ನು ನೀವು ವಿಡಿಯೋ ನೋಡಿದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಗೊತ್ತಾಗುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಏನು ಮಾಡಿ, ಈ ವಿಡಿಯೋ ನೋಡಿದ ತಕ್ಷಣ ಕ್ವಶನ್ ನಂಬರ್ 1 ಇಂದ ಕ್ವಶನ್ ನಂಬರ್ 5ಗೆ ಆನ್ಸರ್ನ ಬರೀರಿ, ಆ ಆನ್ಸರ್ನ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಮೆಂಟರ್ಸ್ಗೆ ತೋರಿಸಿ ಇವ್ಯಾಲ್ಯೂಯೇಷನ್ ಮಾಡಿಸ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ. ಸೊ ಈ ರೀತಿ ಆನ್ಸರ್ ರೈಟಿಂಗ್ ಬರೆಯೋದ್ರಿಂದ ನಿಮಗೆ ಮುಂದೆ ಬರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ UPSC ಮೇನ್ಸ್ 2025ಗೂ ಹೆಲ್ಪ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಅಪ್ಕಮಿಂಗ್ KS ಮೇನ್ಸ್ 2024 ಆರ್ 25ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನಡೀತಕ್ಕಂಥ KS ಮೇನ್ಸ್ಗೆ ನಿಮಗೆ ಆನ್ಸರ್ ರೈಟಿಂಗಿಗೆ ಇದು ಹೆಲ್ಪ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಯಾಕಂತಂದರೆ ಮೋಸ್ಟ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಟೈಮ್ಸ್ KS ಏನು ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ ಅಂದರೆ UPSC PYQ ಏನಿರುತ್ತೆ, ಪ್ರಿವಿಯಸ್ ಇಯರ್ UPSC ಕ್ವಶನ್ಸ್ನೇ ಡೈರೆಕ್ಟಾಗಿ ಕೇಳೋ ಸಾಧ್ಯತೆ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಆ ದೃಷ್ಟಿನಲ್ಲಿ ನೀವು ನೋಡೋದಾದರೆ, ಸೊ ನಾವೇನು ಕ್ವಶನ್ಸ್ ಡಿಸ್ಕಸ್ ಇವಾಗ ಮಾಡ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಗ್ತಿದ್ದೀವಿ UPSC ಮೇನ್ಸ್ 2024 ಅದು ನಿಮಗೆ KSಗೆ ಡೆಫಿನೆಟ್ ಆಗಿ ಹೆಲ್ಪ್ ಮಾಡೇ ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ. ಕಮಿಂಗ್ ಟು ದಿ ಕ್ವಶನ್ ನಂಬರ್ 1 ಆಫ್ ದಿ UPSC ಮೇನ್ಸ್ 2024 GS paper, that is GS-1. The question is as follows: underline the changes in the field of society and economy from Rigvedic to later Vedic period. It's a simple straightforward question. It is a simple straightforward question. Neither it is analytical nor it is application oriented question. So the content for this question is readily available in the ancient history, old ancient history book. The question has single part. So it is asking changes in the field of society and economy from Rigvedic to later Vedic period. It is for 10 marks and the word limit is 150 words. ಕ್ವಶನ್ ಏನು ಕೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ಅಂತಂದರೆ, ರಿಗ್ವೇದಿಕ್ ಪೀರಿಯಡಿಂದ ಲೇಟರ್ ವೇದಿಕ್ ಪೀರಿಯಡ್ಗೆ ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸಿಷನ್ ಆಗಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಸೊಸೈಟಿ ಮತ್ತು ಎಕಾನಮಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಏನೇನು ಚೇಂಜಸ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ, ಸೊ ಅದನ್ನು ಕೇಳಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಈ ಕ್ವಶನಲ್ಲಿ 2 ಡೈಮೆನ್ಷನ್ಸ್ ಇದೆ ಮೇಜರು, ಒಂದು ಸೊಸೈಟಿ ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಎಕಾನಮಿ. ವಿದಿನ್ ಸೊಸೈಟಿ ನಾವು 3 ರಿಂದ 4 ಡೈಮೆನ್ಷನ್ ಅಡ್ರೆಸ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು, ಎಕಾನಮಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು 3 ರಿಂದ 4 ಡೈಮೆನ್ಷನ್ಸ್ನ ಅಡ್ರೆಸ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. ಸೊ ಈ ರೀತಿ 3 ರಿಂದ 4 ನಾವು ಡೈಮೆನ್ಷನ್ಸ್ ಅಡ್ರೆಸ್ ಮಾಡೋದ್ರಿಂದ ನಮಗೆ ಪ್ರತಿಯೊಂದು ಪಾರ್ಟಲ್ಲೂ 3 ರಿಂದ 4 ಪಾಯಿಂಟ್ಸ್ ಸಿಗುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ನಾವು ರಿಲೆವೆಂಟ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ಸ್ನು ಮೆನ್ಷನ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಈ ರೀತಿ ಬರೆಯೋದ್ರಿಂದ ನಮ್ಗೆ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, 10 ಮಾರ್ಕ್ಸ್ ಕ್ವಶನ್ಸಿಗೆ ನಾವು 8 ರಿಂದ 10 ಪಾಯಿಂಟ್ಸ್ ಬರಿಬೋದು. ಅದರ ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಇಂಟ್ರೊಡಕ್ಷನ್ನ ಬರೆದಿರ್ತೀವಿ ಮತ್ತು ಕನ್ಕ್ಲೂಷನ್ನ ಬರೆದಿರ್ತೀವಿ. ಸೊ ದಿಸ್ ವಿಲ್ ಹೆಲ್ಪ್ ಇನ್ ಈಸಿಲಿ ಗೆಟ್ಟಿಂಗ್ 5 to 6 ಮಾರ್ಕ್ಸ್ ಫಾರ್ ದಿಸ್ ಕ್ವಶನ್. Now we will discuss the answer approach to the question that we have discussed, that is question number 1 of GS paper 1 UPSC mains 2024. So introduction ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು ಬರಿಬೋದು, since the question is asking about Rigvedic transition from Rigvedic period to later Vedic period, so what factors contributed to this transition, that context can be written as an introduction. So what are the factors that are responsible for transition? Factors like technological advancements and social stratification and increase in economic activities. So ಈ 3 ಕೀವರ್ಡ್ಸ್ನ ಬರೆದು ನಾವು ಇಂಟ್ರೊಡಕ್ಷನ್ ಬರಿಬೋದು. Or else we can also write the period during which the Vedic period, Rigvedic period and later Vedic period happened. That can also be a good introduction. For example, we can write like the Rigvedic period in India dated between 1500 BC to 1000 BC. So this is also an introduction. We should not worry much about writing some artistic introduction. Whatever given in the NCERT, that can also be written. So writing simple introduction which is relevant to the answer fetches good marks. So for introduction we need not break our heads. Now after writing introduction we should address the changes in the field of society. The question asks changes in the field of society and economy. So first we will address social aspects, changes in the field of society. So what changes happened while transitioning from Rigvedic period to later Vedic period? So what are all changes in society happened? So first we will talk about changes in social structure. How from Rigvedic period to later Vedic period, changes in social structure happened. So during Rigvedic period, the society was relatively egalitarian. That means there is a equality among the people of the society with a limited social stratification. That means this Varna system was about to develop. It was developing slowly in the Rigvedic period, but it was flexible. There is not much discrimination or division of labor as existed in later Vedic period among the different Varna classes like Rajanya, Kshatriya, and Vaishya. Whereas the same social structure, it became that the Varna system, it became rigid in the later Vedic period, leading to the establishment of Varna system, strong Varna system, which later becomes the caste system, which later becomes the or base, which later becomes the base for the existence of caste system in India. So the Brahmins and Kshatriyas, they gained dominance in the society, and the status of Shudras declined. After talking about social structure, now we should talk about the position of woman in this society. While transitioning from Rigvedic period to the later Vedic period, what were the changes with respect to the position of woman? Position of woman. So during Rigvedic period, women enjoyed a respectable status at par with the men. They could participate in religious rituals and they even received the education. Whereas in the later Vedic period, the position of women deteriorated. They lost their right to participate in sacrifices and their status became subservient to the men. So position of women, it started to decline in later Vedic period. For this, we can give examples like women were barred from participating in Ashwamedha, they are excluded, and actually, especially in later Vedic period. Whereas in the early Vedic period, they used to participate in Ashwamedha yagas and other yajnas. Then we should write about religion and rituals, changes in religion and rituals. During Rigvedic period, religion was simple. The people were nature worshippers and they worshipped deities like Indra, Agni, and Varuna. So these deities were very prominent and important, and the rituals were fewer and less complex. What happened in the later Vedic period? Rituals become complex in the later Vedic period with the emergence of the yajnas such as Rajasuya, Ashwamedha. They reflected the complexity of later Vedic religious practices, and the prominence of Brahmins increased in order to perform the elaborate sacrifices. Then, coming to the fourth point, we should talk about kinship and family structure. Changes in the kinship and family structure. During Rigvedic period, society was largely patriarchal. So the society was about to become patriarchal society, but it still allowed for joint family structures, and kinship played a significant role in defining social relations. Whereas in the later Vedic period, what happened? Patriarchy, patriarchy, it strengthened further. Joint family system became more solidified with the male head of the family holding the considerable authority over the family. Example, the concept of Grahapati, the head of the household, become more defined in later Vedic periods. So these are the 4 points we should write in the changes in the society while transitioning from later Rigvedic period to later Vedic period. Now we will address the changes in economy of the society from while transitioning from later Vedic period to Rigvedic period. The first point with respect to economy we can talk is mode of production or primary economic activity, that is agriculture. During the Rigvedic period, the primary economic activity was pastoral. It means animal rearing. Society was largely dependent on animal rearing, and in the later Vedic period, what happened? agriculture become primary occupation. The shift from pastoral to an agrarian society was very much evident in the later Vedic period. For example, Samhitas and Brahmanas books talk about or mention about agricultural implements, fluffs, and the importance of land, showing to an agricultural shift. This point adds value to our answer. Just by just we cannot write like that. During Rigvedic period, society the primary occupation was pastoralism. In later Vedic period, agriculture became the primary occupation. So we should also support our point. For in order to support our point, we should mention the Samhitas and Brahmanas books. They mention about the implements, agricultural implements, ploughs, and the importance of land. By writing this point, we are going to add value to our point. After writing about agriculture, we should talk about trade and commerce. Trade and commerce is also one of the economic activity. So during Rigvedic period, there was a limited trade, that is mostly on barter system. Trade was very limited and it is dependent on barter system, and cattle was a major form of wealth during the Rigvedic period. During Rigvedic period, cattle is the major form of wealth, whereas in the later Vedic period, there was a growth in the prominence of or importance of the trade. Trade was increasing. This can be attributed by writing or mentioning the coins like Nishka, a form of currency. It was in circulation. So this indicates that the barter system of trade was replaced by use of currency or coins. And also we can mention the growth of guilds or shrenis, which are the variety of crafts, which are the guilds of variety of the crafts. So this indicates the development of trade and commerce. In the third point, we should write the use of iron. Use of iron. During the Rigvedic period, the use of iron implements was absent or very minimal. The economy was based on copper or bronze tools. Whereas in the later Vedic period, the use of iron became widespread and significantly improving the agriculture and warfare activities. So we can mention the use of iron can be mentioned as Krishna Ayasa. So the iron was used to called as Krishna Ayasa in the later Vedic text. This we can mention. The term like Krishna Ayasa we can mention. So this adds value to our point. The iron was used to called as Krishna Ayasa in the later Vedic periods. Coming to the fourth point, we can write about land ownership in the fourth point. The concept of private land ownership was not prominent in the Rigvedic period because the society was based on pastoralism and the people were migrating from one place to another. Whereas in the later Vedic period, the idea of land ownership it gained the significance. Kings granted land to Brahmins, leading to the rise of private property. Example for the rise of grants can be written as Brahmadeya. Brahmadeya means it's a land grants given to the Brahmins, and the temples illustrate the importance of land in later Vedic period. By writing these 4 points, we can establish that there are a lot of changes in the economy from Rigvedic period to the later Vedic period. So after writing both the parts like society and economy, changes in the society and economy, we should write the conclusion. What we can write the conclusion? In the conclusion, the changes that has happened during the transitioning from Rigvedic to later Vedic period, how these changes have had a major impact on the subsequent developments in the Indian civilization, influencing social norms, economic activities, and political organizations. This we can write. So this is all about the structure and answer approach to the question 1 of the UPSC 2024 GS-1 paper. Now we will discuss the question number 2 and its answer approach, structure, and the major content that can be written for the question number 2. The question number 2 is estimate the contribution of Pallavas of Kanchi for the development of art and literature of South India. So the question is very straightforward. It is asking about the contribution of the Pallavas of Kanchi for the development of art and literature of the South India. And this question is for 10 marks and the word limit is 150 words. 10 marks and 150 words. So first we have to begin our answer by writing an introduction. So introduction ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು ಬರಬಹುದು? Simple and straightforward introduction. The Pallavas of Kanchi, they ruled from the 4th to 9th century and made a significant contribution to the development of art and literature in South India. By mentioning their period of rule, we are going to begin our answer. Period of rule. They ruled between 4th to 9th century. So this is a very simple and straightforward introduction. So we need not break our head to write artistic and fancy introductions. So the question is asking about contributions to the art and literature. So first we should address art part, then we will address the literature part. So Pallavas of Kanchis, their contribution to the art. So within art we will talk first about rock cut architecture. So we will talk about the rock cut architectural contribution of Pallavas of Kanchi. So here we should mention the rock cut temples at Mahabalipuram, especially the five rathas, Pancharathas. They are classic example of Pallava architecture. These are monolithic structures and they are built on the single granite rocks. They represent the beginning of South Indian temple architecture. Then in the second point, we should talk about structural temples. After talking about the rock cut architecture, we should talk about structural temples. The Pallavas, they are pioneer in structural temples. These structural temples, they evolved from the earlier rock cut temples. For structural temples, we can give examples like Shore Temple at Mahabalipuram, which was built under the reign of Narsimhavarman II. So within art, we can, as a third point, we should talk about sculpture. Sculpture. Pallavas of Kanchi, they contributed immensely to the evolution of sculpture culture in South India. So they commissioned the executive sculptures of gods, goddesses, and mythological figures. Examples we can quote about the sculptures that are depicted in Mahabalipuram. So after writing 3 points with respect to art, now we should talk about the contribution of the Pallavas of Kanchi to literature. Their contribution to the literature. Within literature, first we will talk about their promotion and patronage to the Sanskrit literature. The Pallavas of Kanchi, they encouraged the growth of Sanskrit literature, and the several scholars in their court contributed to a body of Sanskrit works. Example, we can write the work of Dandi, who wrote a treatise called Kavya Darsa. So this we should mention. Then as a second point, we should talk about the contribution to Tamil literature. So the Pallavas, they were also patronized and promoted the Tamil literature. For this, we can give examples like their patronage to scenes like Alvars and Nayanars. So these Tamil literature of Alvars and Nayanars, it contributed to the growth of Bhakti movement. This is all about answer, approach, and major content that can be written for question number 2. Coming to the conclusion, what we can write in conclusion. So the Pallavas of Kanchi made a lasting contribution to the development of art and literature in South India. Their innovations in temple architecture, particularly the transition from rock cut to structural temples, it laid the foundation for future Dravidian architectural developments. So by writing this, we are going to conclude our answer. So the major emphasis on conclusion should be the Pallavas contributed to architecture and art. It laid the foundation for future Dravidian architectural developments. Coming to the question number 3 of GS-1 paper, what were the events that led to the Quit India movement? Point out its results. The question has 2 parts. In the first part, the question is asking about the factors that are responsible for the resolution of Quit India movement. And in the second part, it is asking about the outcomes or the results that happened because of the Quit India movement. So this question has two parts, and we should write 4 to 5 points, 4 to 5 points for each part. So this is for 150 words and 10 marks. This question is also simple and straightforward. There is no application of mind and analytical thinking required to answer this question. So we have to start our answer by writing an introduction. So in the introduction, we should briefly talk about what is Quit India movement. So Quit India movement, it was also known as August movement. It was also known as August movement. It was a civil disobedient movement launched by Mahatma Gandhi in August 1942, demanding an end to British rule in India. It was called as August movement. It was a civil disobedient movement. It was launched by Mahatma Gandhi ji in August 1942 to end the British rule in India. So this is going to be a brief introduction which also talks about, which also briefly mentions about the Quit India movement. Now we should focus on writing the first part, that is events that led to the Quit India movement. The first point is failure of Cripps mission. Failure of Cripps mission. So the Britishers, they sent Cripps mission in order to get the cooperation of Indian leaders during the World War II. But the Cripps mission, it failed because it did not offer complete independence, but it only offered dominion status, which was rejected by Indian nationalist leaders. And there was a lack of concrete proposals for granting immediate self-governance to the Indian nationalist leaders to rule India. So both Congress and Muslim League rejected the Cripps proposals. So this is one of the reasons. The second event that led to the Quit India movement is impact of World War II. Impact of the World War II. India's forced participation in World War II without the consent of the India's nationalist leaders, especially the Congress, it created a widespread resentment among the people and various sections of society. This led to the resignation of Congress ministries in various provinces as a mark of protest, then growing discontent among the Indian population, especially as the war worsened the economic conditions with the rising inflation, shortage of foods, and military repression. Then, in the third point, we should write about Japanese threat. Japan was gaining advancements in Southeast India and South India. Japanese threat. By 1942, Japan gained severe advancements in East India's eastern frontiers. It occupied Burma, so it posed a direct threat to British rule in India. So many of the Indian leaders, they feared that if Britishers were defeated, India could fall into Japanese hands. So then in the fourth point, we should talk about leadership of Mahatma Gandhi and his slogan "Do or Die." Gandhi's leadership. Gandhi's leadership advocating for non-violent resistance against the colonial rule. It created the foundation for mass movement, and later his slogan during the resolution of Quit India movement, that is "Do or Die." It inspired the masses to join the struggle for complete independence. So after writing the first part, that is the event that led to the Quit India movement, now we should write about the results or consequences or outcome of the Quit India movement. So the first outcome is severe British repression, severe British crackdown. So Britishers, they severely cracked down the Quit India movement with harsh measures, including the arrest of major leaders like Mahatma Gandhi, Jawaharlal Nehru, Sardar Patel, along with the mass repression. Then the second point is rise of underground resistance. Rise of underground resistance. So the severe repression by Britishers This led to the rise of underground networks that continued to fight the British rule through acts of sabotage, dissemination of pamphlets, and other covert activities. Then the third point is this movement it strengthened the national unity. The movement unified the Indians across the regions, classes, and religions in the struggle for independence. The participation of women and youth during Quit India movement was very significant. So this set the stage for eventual independence. In the fourth point, we should talk about paving the way for complete independence. That is complete independence. Even though the movement was suppressed, it gave a befitting or final blow to the Britishers or British rule in India. So it weakened the British hold on India and it convinced them that maintaining colonial rule would not be sustainable post war. Then, fifth point, we can talk about the international impact. So this Quit India movement it attracted the various countries like United States. So the British government it faced the increasing pressure from USA to grant the independence to India. So this is all about part two of the question. So we by writing these 5 points we can address the part two of the question. Coming to the conclusion, what we can write in conclusion, we can emphasize the importance of Quit India movement in the conclusion. Although the movement, if it not gains much success immediately, but later, within 3 years, it laid the foundation for India's eventual freedom that we can write. The movement reflected the growing impatience of the Indian masses and their determination to achieve self rule. So, by writing these points, we can conclude the answer. So, this is all about the approach, content, and structure for the question number 3 of GS-1 paper. In addition to these points, you can also add your own points which you feel relevant. Now we will discuss question number 4, its answer approach and the major content that can be written for question number 4. The question number 4 is, what is sea surface temperature rise? How does it affect the formation of tropical cyclones? The question has two parts. In the first part, we should explain the concept of sea surface temperature rise, and in the second part we should link the relation between sea surface temperature and how this will contribute to the formation of tropical cyclone. Again, this is also a straightforward static question. It is a straightforward static question. For this question, the content is available in NCERT, that is Fundamentals of Physical Geography, and also this concept, that is tropical cyclones and the sea surface temperature, it had been discussed in the classes. So you can also write answer by referring your class notes. So we should begin our answer by writing an introduction. So in the introduction we can either write the context. Context means what? So due to global warming and climate change, there is a increased tendency or intensity of the rise in sea surface temperature. So every year the researchers and scientists they are recording the increase in the sea surface temperature. This we can write in the introduction, or else we we can start the answer by defining the what is sea surface temperature. So, what is sea surface temperature? It refers to the temperature of the uppermost layer of the ocean, usually measured in the top few meters. So, this is the definition of sea surface temperature. And this sea surface temperature, this the temperature of this layer, that is sea surface temperature, this varies due to factors like solar radiation, ocean currents, and seasonal changes. The sea surface temperature rise refers to an increase in the average temperature of this surface layer over time. This is primarily due to global warming. This is caused by the enhanced greenhouse gas effect. So by writing all these points, we have explained the concept of sea surface temperature rise. So this addresses the first part of the question. So now we should establish the link between formation of tropical cyclones and sea surface temperature rise. That is, we are going to address the second part of the question. So here we are going to address how sea surface temperature rise affects the formation of tropical cyclones. In the first point, we are going to talk about cyclone formation requires warm waters. Cyclone formation requires warm waters and the sea surface temperature should be greater than 27 degrees Celsius. So when the sea surface temperature rises due to global warming, the more regions of the ocean reach this 27 degrees Celsius level. So this is very critical for the formation of tropical cyclones. So because of the increase in the sea surface temperature in more oceanic bodies, more regions of the ocean come under the influence of formation of the tropical cyclones. For example, earlier the tropical cyclones, they used to form only this much of the water body. The reason being the sea surface temperature is about 27 degrees Celsius, only this much part of the oceanic body. Whereas due to rise in the sea surface temperature, the larger portion of the oceanic body, it is coming under the 27 degrees Celsius threshold. So because of that, there is a more area which is coming under the formation of tropical cyclones. Then in the second point, due to increase in the sea surface temperature, there is a more evaporation. More evaporation. So this more evaporation, it leads to the more moisture content. It leads to the more moisture content in the oceanic atmospheric bodies. So this moisture content, it fuels or it paves the way for the formation of tropical cyclones. Without moisture, tropical cyclones cannot form. Then the third point we should talk about is strengthening of tropical cyclones. The rise in sea surface temperature, it strengthens the tropical cyclones. The reason being warmer ocean temperatures, they allow storms to quickly gain strength. So because of the increase in the sea surface temperature, there is a rapid intensification of the tropical cyclones. This can be witnessed in recent years. So for this part, we can quote the examples of rise in intensity and frequency of the tropical cyclones in both Arabian Sea and Bay of Bengal. In the fourth point, we should talk about enhanced latent heat release. Enhanced latent heat release. So this latent release of latent heat, it is one of the major contributing factor for the formation of tropical cyclones. As the sea surface temperature rises, the moisture from the increased evaporation, it rises, it cools and it condenses. So this releases the latent heat. So this latent heat, it fuels the cyclone, making the cyclone stronger and more intense. The fifth point we can talk about is longer cyclone seasons. Longer cyclone seasons. As the sea surface temperature increases, so if it is stays, the increase in sea surface temperature, if it is stays for more duration or longer duration, this in turn affects the or increases the cyclonic season. As of now, we have two seasons of tropical cyclone. One is between April to April to August. So another one is between September to November. So these periods, there is an extension in these periods because of the rise in sea surface temperature. So after writing all these points, we should also talk about other environmental impacts of the rise in sea surface temperature. So in the first point, we should mention about the increased storm surges. So how rise in sea surface temperature also increases the storm surges in oceanic water bodies. In the second point, we should talk about loss of marine biodiversity. So because of increase in sea surface temperature, there is a threat to marine biodiversity also that we should mention. Then in the third point, we should talk about the human and economic losses. Due to increased sea surface temperature, there is a threat or hazard to the human settlements which are located near the seashore, and also there is a threat to economic activities of the humans. So we should write all these points with examples. So this is all about answering the concept of sea surface temperature rise and its impact on the formation of tropical cyclones. So while answering the second part of the question, that is impact on formation of tropical cyclones, we should also mention recent cyclones like cyclone Taukte, cyclone Asna, cyclone Yagi, cyclone Rimal. So we should give examples for each of these points. So coming to the conclusion, so what we can write in the conclusion. So this sea surface temperature rise, it is a direct consequence of global warming, and it is one of the primary factors for driving the increased frequency, intensity and geographic spread of tropical cyclones. By writing this, we can conclude our answer, or else we can also emphasize the impact of sea surface temperature that has on environmental, social and economic implications. So this is all about answer approach and major content and structure for the question number 4. Now we will discuss question number 5 and its answer approach. The question number 5 is as follows. Why do large cities tend to attract more migrants than smaller towns? Discuss in the light of conditions in developing countries. So the question, it has two parts. In the first part, we should answer about why large cities they tend to attract more migrants than smaller towns, and we should discuss all these points taking reference or taking examples from the conditions that are happening in developing countries such as India, Bangladesh, Brazil, Mexico, China. So we can take examples from these countries. So this question is for 10 marks and it carries 150 words. So for this question, we should write at least 8 points along with introduction and conclusion. And these 8 points, these should be backed by data and examples. Just by writing points, we are not going to get marks. So for all the 8 points, for at least 5 to 6 points, we should write relevant data and we should write relevant examples. So we have to begin our answer by writing an introduction. In the introduction, we should talk about the large cities and the opportunities they provide. Large cities are often seen as a hubs of opportunity, diversity, and excitement. So this makes them more attractive destinations for migrants who are looking for a new place to call as their home. In contrast, the smaller towns they are not as attractive as the bigger cities because of the same level of amenities that we get in the larger cities may not be available in smaller cities. That's why the migrants they choose bigger cities compared to the smaller cities. So by writing this, we can introduce our answer. Now we will dive into answering the major content. That is, why large cities attract more migrants than smaller ones. What are the factors responsible for that? So the reasons are as follows. So the first reason is better economic opportunities. Economic opportunities. So the large cities they provide more diverse employment opportunities due to concentration of various industries, multinational corporations, and various service sectors like businesses like finances, hotel, and other things. For this, we can quote examples like Indian cities like Mumbai and Delhi and Bengaluru. They attract migrants due to job opportunities in finance, IT, manufacturing. Then within economic opportunities, the second point is higher wages. The bigger cities like Delhi, Mumbai and Bengaluru, they offer higher wages to the migrant workers so that they can sustain themselves and also they can remit the surplus amount to their natives. For this, we can quote examples like Sao Paulo in Brazil, Lagos in Nigeria, where the urban wages are really high compared to the smaller towns. Then the second point is access to services and infrastructure. Access to services and infrastructure. So the bigger cities they provide better education and healthcare services compared to the smaller cities. Bigger cities they host many number of world class universities, schools and also vocational and skill development training institutes. For example, city like Delhi in India which has world class universities which attract students from mainly South Asia and African countries. And Bengaluru, which is one of the hotspots for medical tourism. It has very good medical institutions and hospitals. So such education and hospital services, they attract the migrants more. So such facilities are absent in smaller cities. Then coming to infrastructure wise, the larger cities, they have a better transportation and connectivity like metro rails in Bengaluru and suburban railway in Mumbai. Such transportation and connectivity facilities are absent in smaller cities. And also the ride aggregators or aggregators, they are more penetrated in Bengaluru compared to other cities, other smaller cities. Then the third point is social and cultural factors. Social and cultural factors. Urban lifestyle and modern amenities. Many of the migrants, they are attracted, especially the youth, they are drawn to the urban lifestyle, which offers modern amenities, entertainment options, and cultural attractions. For example, in China, cities like Shanghai, it attracts migrants from smaller towns because of the urban lifestyle and entertainment options. The same way in India, many of the migrants, they choose Bengaluru compared to the other bigger towns in India. The reason being social and cultural factors. The Bengaluru, it offers cosmopolitan social structure, and it has also offers lot of entertainment options without any language barrier and other cultural barriers. Then the fourth point that we can write is family and community networks. Often migrants, they move to large cities where already their family has been existed. So and the community has been existed. So because of this family and community connection, this family and community connections, it helps them to go and settle in new locality with ease. So such facilities may not be available in cities like smaller cities. So because of that, the migrants, they choose larger cities compared to the smaller cities. Example for this is cities like Mumbai, which hosts the various communities, which attracted the various communities from different regions of India. So this helps the people to come and settle in Mumbai with ease. Then the fifth point we can write is government policies and urban development plans. This is because the large cities, they are hubs of economic activities. They are the engines of economic growth. Because of that, they are under monitor by the governments. So the government, it usually favors the large cities compared to the smaller ones. So because of that, so because of this reason also, the large cities, they attract more migrants. For example, in India, urban centers like Bengaluru, they benefit from tech-friendly policies of the Karnataka government. So because of that, it attracts the more skilled migrants compared to the other cities. So within government policy, we can also talk about FDI. So because of the stable government policies and the cosmopolitan culture, the international investors, they favor cities which have better infrastructure and stable government, such as in Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh, which attracts the significant FDI, so leading to the industrial growth and increased migration in Ho Chi Minh City. Then the sixth point that we can write is industrialization and urbanization. So many of the major cities or big cities, they have grown to that size because of the industrialization and globalization. So for this point, we can give example like in Ethiopia, Addis Ababa, it attracts migrants as the country's economy is transitioning from agriculture to manufacturing. In the same way, we can write the examples like city from Bangladesh, that is Dhaka. So it has creating more jobs in government and construction sector. So these are the points that we can write for the question number 5. This is all about the major content and approach to the question number 5. So coming to the conclusion part, so what we can write in conclusion. So before writing conclusion, we should also briefly mention the consequences of urban migration to large cities, like overpopulation and the creation of urban sprawls, unemployment and underemployment, creation of slums and squatter settlements, environmental degradation, and social equality. These points we should mention. After mentioning these points, we should write the conclusion. What we can write in the conclusion? Large cities in developing countries, they attract more migrants and compared to the smaller towns due to better economic opportunity access to service, and modern infrastructure. However, this also leads to the negative consequences like leading to urban congestion, traffic, inequality, environmental degradation. So this we should write in the conclusion. So this is all about answer approach and major content discussion for GS-1 paper, question number 1 to question number 5. In the next part, that is in part 2, we are going to discuss answer approach to the question number 5 to question number 10. So what aspirants can do? Now you, after watching this video, you take a pen and paper, write the answer to the all 5 questions, get it evaluated by your mentors. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video. Till then, happy learning.